Hey, welcome to leadership class. Today we're going to be looking at the biblical theological foundations of spiritual leadership. Let me share my screen with you here and we will get started. Leadership is about lifting others up, says Darth Vader. Lifting others up. Um, but it is about others, right? It's all about others. John Maxwell said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And in our last session, I gave some foundational pieces to begin with, right? That the first lesson of leadership is what? Followership. Followership. We're following the leader. Uh, the second lesson is don't be a what? A goober. Don't be a goober. The third lesson, feed the goose. Feed the goose. Hooby dooby doo, because your being is in your doing and your doing is in your being, and the being comes first. You be out of what you do. And we want to go deep, go deep, go deep. And learn for life you must. Be a lifelong learner. Learn for life. So teach you I will today. Teach you I will. The theological foundations for leadership. This is a passage from the Psalms about David. It says that David shepherded them with integrity of heart. He led them with integrity of heart, and he guided them with skillful hands. So there's two aspects of leadership. There's the integrity of heart issue, and then the skillful hand issue. And so the first part of the class is all about integrity of heart, because if you don't have that, you're not much of a leader. I mean, you might have the skill, but if you don't have the integrity, then you're going to lead people in a destructive way. But to do it the right way, the God way, we start with integrity of heart. Hooby dooby doo. We start with the being, and then we do the stuff with skillful hands. So there are leadership skills that we can learn that'll help us to be more effective as leaders, and we'll cover that later in this course. And First Peter says, be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care. And that's what we're called to do, to shepherd the flock. See, there's a difference between shepherding and ranching. We're called to be shepherds, not ranchers. You don't drive sheep, you guide them, you lead them. And effective ministry leadership is about shepherding more than it is about ranching. Now, we are called to be humble leaders. Whoops, I'm sorry. Leaders that are humble and loving, but also strong, right? It's both. It's kind of like sweet and sour. It's like putting these two things together. Sometimes they seem to be almost opposite of each other because sometimes the strong leaders don't seem very loving, and sometimes the loving leaders don't seem very strong. But we need to do both. We need to hold strength of leadership and the sensitivity of leadership, to put these two things into one. Speaking the truth in love is the idea here. And most of us fall off the log on one end or the other. We tend to be more strong visionary leaders, or we tend to be more relational, love the people kind of leaders. And you have to figure out which one you are, because whatever that is, there's a shadow side to it. And that shadow side can be a weakness in your leadership that you need to correct. So, like, if you're more of a loving leader, you're probably going to have to buckle it up and make hard conversations. You probably have hard conversations you really need to have, but you've avoided. And on the other side of that, if you are good at hard conversations, maybe you need to soften it up and be more patient and slow it down and try to connect with where the people are. Let's give you some theological foundations for leadership. The first is that we need to actually be it. Who be do, right? We need to model what matters most. A couple of writers, Irving and Strauss, said what that means is modeling integrity, modeling responsibility, and modeling investment in others. And as we are integrated in our hearts, as we are responsible, we show people then what it means to be responsible. When we invest in others, then they will invest in others. Uh, Philip Keller said, no pastor, no spiritual leader is ever able to take his people any farther than he himself has gone with God. Keller, by the way, was a shepherd who wrote a great book called A Shepherd Looks at the 23rd Psalm, and basically saying that the sheep follow after the shepherd, right? And so this is the idea. Your people are going to follow after you. So if you want your people to go deep with God, you got to go deep with God. If you want people to be deep in prayer and the word and stewardship, you need to be that. The Apostle Paul says, follow my example as I follow Christ. Now, when we think about the word model, we think of like a small imitation of something, right? So, like, there's like when I was a kid, I put together model cars. There was a big car, and mine's just kind of a small imitation of the real thing. uh, so, like, there's this lady that once said to her pastor, "You are a model pastor." And he says, "Ooh, that feels good." Until he went home and looked it up, and it said a small imitation of the real thing. But what a model really is this. I was at the Naval Academy with my son not too long ago, and I saw the model ships. And basically, these model ships were small imitations. They were small, um, like examples of what was going to be. So actually, they built the model ship first, and then they built the big ship based on the model ship. So these little model ships came first, and then the great big ones came after the fact. And so, like when we're modeling, it's like that. We want to have a life that's a pattern that other people can build their lives, and hopefully their lives will be far greater than mine, surpass it far greater than mine as they follow what I do as I follow Christ Jesus. Bud Bence was a model for me. He's my theology professor, and I just love him so dearly. He taught me to think theologically, to think deeply, to love history, but to live it, engage it in today. And there's a big piece of him. In fact, he's the reason why I'm a professor today. Who is your model? Who modeled what matters to you, and what did they demonstrate to you? And who are you modeling for? By the way, you may not even realize the people. I don't think Bud Bence understood the impact that he had on my life. And maybe you do not understand the impact others you're having on other people. Oh, I love this from John Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, you are a leader. So there's an inspirational aspect. Well, what does spiritual leadership look like? Well, it's pastoral, it's shepherding, like I said before. Basically, there are four types of pastoral leaders, though it isn't just shepherding. There are some that are more gifted as entrepreneur, missionaries, visionaries. I mean, they see something in the future and they go after that. There are the shepherds that love people really well and bring people along. There's the teacher leader that expounds on the word of God and people are drawn to them from that. And so they're the influences through teaching. And then others, it's more administrative, that they're just really good at putting plans together and organizing things and making that go. One question is, what kind of leader are you primarily? Usually, like two of these will emerge as your primary, and the other two are secondary. All four of these are necessary for effective life-giving, forward-thinking leadership. But probably you'll do one or two of these as your main, and then the others are kind of secondary. So what you want to do is find people that are gifted in the other areas to come around you to help you and shore that up for you as the leader. The Apostle Paul talks about leadership. If you set your eyes or your heart on being an overseer, a leader, you desire a noble task. It's a good thing because we need leaders. However, in James it says, not many of you should become leaders or teachers because, my fellow believers, you know those who teach will be judged more strictly. And so don't just pray to get that unless you're willing to pay the price. And the price here is your life. You have to model it, right? You have to model it. The uh, the book of First Timothy and Titus both give lists of qualifications for spiritual leadership. And so when you are going to write a paper on this, maybe you want to take a look at these. Now, one thing about it is look at how the character is is mentioned versus the skill of a leader. And what you will see, it's almost all character stuff. Like the qualification is about character. So, so when you're looking for people, for instance, to lead, there are three things. There's character, chemistry, and competence. And the chemistry is whether you get along with a person. The competence is whether they can do the skill. But the most important one is the character. What kind of person is this deep down in your heart? Your most important leadership task then is developing your character. So let's take a look at a few biblical principles for leadership. Like it says in Acts, keep watch over yourself and the flock that where the Holy Spirit's made you an overseer. Be shepherd because Jesus bought them with the blood. Here they are. Number one is integrity. And the word integrity means integrated, that you're not compartmentalized, that your life is your whole life. And there's not like a leadership aspect and another part and your private life and your public life. It's just one life. You have one life and it's all integrated. That's what integrity is. If it doesn't match, then that's not integrated. That's disintegrated. Oh, I do not know why this is this way, but basically talks about do the straight path, right? Take the straight path, don't take the crooked path. There's an old Latin term, sincere. That's where we get our word sincere. It means without wax. And the reason why that word is there, sincere, what it means is sometimes they'd make statues or things. They would sculpt stuff and then like boop, oh no, I knocked the statue's nose off. Oh, rats, that's going to take me a lot of work. But they, wait a minute. If I take wax and I put it on here and I stick it back on the statue nose and then I brush it up and paint it over, nobody will know the difference. And certainly that's true until the heat is on. And when the heat is on, the nose falls off the statue. So the word sincere comes from that, sincere without wax. And so like sometimes what we do is we are kind of waxy at things. We pasted on some things like with our integrity, our character. And when that happens, when the heat is on, is when what we are really about comes out. When things melt, when it melts down and you're under lots of pressure, that's when the real you comes out. So what comes out when you are under the heat lamp? That is the big question. Leadership is congruence, where your inner life and your outer life are congruent with each other, that they dance together. It's the same thing. It's not different. It is not incongruent. It's congruent. So you look at things like what I say, how I act, what I measure, what I prioritize, and you put all of that together in a mutual congruence, and that is your leadership shadow. That is the extent of your leadership, right? The depth and the width and the shadow of your whole leadership is based on all four of these things: what I say, how I act, what I prioritize, what I measure, what I am, right? That's what does that, congruence. The opposite of congruence is hypocrisy or duplicity, where you're two-faced, where you're wearing masks, where you're acting something that is not really true. Sometimes people do this. They have a thin glaze of love on the outside because you know as a pastor you have to be loving, but on the inside there's more of self-interest and self-promotion and stuff like that. So really that's incongruent because you don't love deeply from the heart. You're just loving on a glaze from the outside. The second is humility. Humility. Who exalts himself will be humbled. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Let's be humble people. C.S. Lewis says humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less, losing yourself in your giving of yourself, right? So it isn't about self-focus. It's about servanthood instead, right? So what does Jesus do? He picks up a towel and washes feet, and that's what we need to do. If we're going to be the greatest, we need to be the greatest servant. Jesus said the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And the opposite of that is arrogance and narcissism, where we are just so consumed about our own will, our own way, our own wants. Now, the way you know whether this is true about you is how you react when your ego gets dinged. When somebody criticizes you or whatever, you get all defensive and stuff. That's just a sign you need to work on your humility. Trust is the next one. Trusting God with all your heart. Don't lean on your understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path. The Father knows what He's doing. You're like the kid on the back. Just hang on, and let Him drive. Let Him drive. Sometimes I'm wanting to drive the car, but He's the one that has to drive the car. The opposite of this is mistrust and unbelief. Just like Adam and Eve, Satan says, did God really say, no, 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 that's not what it is. You do it your way, right? And so we mistrust him. So one question is, how much am I allowing anxiety and fear to dictate my decisions? How much of my leadership life is based on trusting God with the future? The next one I'd like to bring to the table is holiness. Holiness. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord, it says. Just as he called you as holy, be holy in all you do. Hooby dooby doo. Be holy in all you do. Be holy, for I am holy. And so this is the idea that we are called unto holiness. If we're going to be leadership people, we need to live a holy life. And does that mean? It isn't holier than thou-ness. It isn't sour sanctimony. It just means living in the overflow of holy love. Just living in the buckets of his love. As he's loving me, I just live in that love, and then I let that love flow out to other people. Living in the overflow of holy love. The opposite of that is carnality, where you're living in the flesh rather than the spirit. It's unlove, where you're acting and living in unloving kinds of ways. If you are not loving well, then you're not spiritually mature, because spiritual maturity is the mark. The mark of that is love. It really is. Stewardship. Stewardship is the next spiritual principle of leadership, that our lives are about stewarding what God owns. We don't own the stuff, and our leadership is not our leadership. In fact, we changed the name of a class at Southern Wesleyan. It was called Launching Your Ministry. And we just changed the name of it because we realized it's not your ministry, it's his ministry. So we changed it to Launching in Ministry, and we're going to tell them it's not yours. You're just borrowing it for a little bit. You get to help a little bit. You're Jesus's little helper, but that's about it. I mean, you he can carry on his work without you. It's not yours. It's not yours. But we need to be faithful with the little bit that he's given. The master says to this servant, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a little, I'll set you over much. Now, the words servant and steward are interchangeable there. It's because we're stewarding his stuff. And if he's giving you something to steward, then steward it. Steward your calendar, steward the budget, steward the money, steward the vision, steward the people and the flock that are under your care. This is your responsibility, and do not let fear dictate that. The opposite of that is selfishness and self-centeredness. Because if it's about me, then I'm going to hoard things. I'm going to hold on to things. I'm not going to give it away. But if I'm stewarding, then I'm going to give away authority. I'm going to give away leadership. I'm going to let other people get the glory, because it's not mine in the first place. It all belongs to him. The last one I want to talk about is mission, that we are on a mission from God, and the mission is what the leadership is all about. Like, it's helping to fulfill the mission. That's why we lead, so we can organize and mobilize to fulfill the mission of God. And the mission is also the co-mission. The reason why it's called a co-mission is because Jesus is doing it with us, and he's leading the way. And the great co-mission is to go into all the world, make disciples of all people, right? That's the co-mission. So Jesus first, we come along beside, and we can use our little bit of leadership, whatever that is, to leverage that mission to make a difference in the world. The opposite of living on mission is apathy, or the old monks used to call that acedia. Acedia. It's listed as one of the seven deadly sins, acedia, which is translated these days as sloth, but it's more important than sloth. Acedia is when you burn out and you lose your desire to care, because then just everything is a long road ahead of you and you just don't see it, and you're grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. That's acedia, that you kind of lose your vision, you lose your juice, you lose your energy to do the mission, to do the thing. But it's because somewhere along the line we got sidetracked, and we're not accomplishing what it is that we were called to accomplish. And we've been caught up in a bunch of other stuff that really doesn't matter that much. A lot of times conflict will do that to us. It'll just knock us sideways and ding our hearts. And so then we kind of lose that passion for the mission. Oh, we need to ask God to restore our first love and restore our passion for the mission. Well, there you have it. That's the stuff. So there's going to be an assignment about the theology of leadership. And what I want you to do is to maybe you can look some of this. I'd like to see some of this in there to know that you actually did the video. But also look at for other things, like what are examples from the Bible of good leadership or bad leadership? There are plenty of bad examples of leadership that break the rules of this stuff. And say, look what happened to Saul, for instance. Why is Saul different than David? Why is David called a man after God's own heart? What does the Bible say about leadership principles in general? Is there something that way beyond? Because I just skimmed the surface. I gave you just a few. I could have given you about 500 of them. These are just ones that are important to me. What are the ones that are important to you? That's what I want to know. And I look forward to reading your paper.